Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox Podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. I am joined this evening by James Fox. How are you, James?
Great, Ian. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. So great news just came across the wire a few hours ago is that Noah Schultz is being bumped to Double A. Good stuff. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, look, he just we kind of said that he just needed innings regardless of where they were, and I think you had kind of made a lot of comments about how nobody in high A can hit him anyway. So let's get those innings in double. I think it's fine.
Yeah. So the thing being is that the kid's got a .91 whip in advanced A. So if you aren't getting the competitive needs that you have there, even if he is just being slated as 4 innings per start, it makes sense to me to bump him up if that's indeed the case. Um, it just seems like a logical move to bump him up there, in my opinion. You think that it's aggressive, or do you think that's the right move?
No, I think it's fine. I think they just I think they do want him more challenged at some point than he has been, and he's just not, and obviously he's given up some runs, but nobody's hit him at all. So I don't know what it means. I guess like going forward, like, do you think this makes any more likely that he's closer to the majors than we thought? Like maybe like mid-season 2025, or does it not really matter?
Huh. I don't think it really matters. We've talked, like you had mentioned earlier, with the innings and him needing to get innings. I personally don't want to see the Chris Sale thing, where they bring him up as a reliever. Personally, I just don't want to see it. I just kind of want him to hop straight into his role, and I certainly don't want him anywhere around the buffoon at 35th and Shields. So, yeah, that's just my my thoughts on it. Is that I'd rather just see him in a starting role, and if they were to skip Charlotte for him, and they feel that next year is the year to kind of ramp him up and bump him up, quickly, I don't have a problem with that at all, as long as it makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious to see what happens elsewhere now, just with like the rest of because I know like we talk a lot off air about like all the pitchers that they have. Like who's going where? Like does do a couple guys go to Charlotte because of this? Like does somebody go from Canny to Winston? So I think the next moves will be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. The chain reaction of him getting bumped is one of those things, and somebody asked in the baseball tossed asked thoughts on Schultz promotion, and do you expect Thorpe to now go to Charlotte? And me and you have had this conversation off stream that it seems like the next step in things, I would think. I know that Drew says that you are echoing. Odd. Let me see if I can figure.
Yeah, I can hear it too, but I didn't think anybody
would. Interesting. Let me. Do you have so your speakers aren't on currently, I take it, at all?
No.
Interesting. Well, I don't know what that. I don't know what's causing that, because I don't have that on in my area. So the as far as the Thorpe thing goes, it seems like that seems to be the next logical thing. I don't know what Drew Thorpe necessarily has to prove at AA. He did have a outing, his second outing of the week. Why does it keep doing that? He had a start last, what was that? 1 week ago on Sunday, and it was his second start of the week. And there was an issue with very high pitch count in that first inning of his second start of the week. And this week, his start, the first inning, was also a very stressful inning. He got up to, I think he got through the inning, but I think it was in 32 pitches or 31 pitches in the first inning this week. And after that, once he got out of that first inning, it was back to normal, and just 1-2-3 inning, 1-2-3 inning, and not much of a problem. So it seems like the next logical step for my thoughts, but anybody's guess is as good as mine, I suppose, because there has been no clarification from anybody as to what's going on. So,
Well, I mean, I kind of feel like anybody from that rotation could go to Charlotte, and it would be fine.
yeah,
Thorpe seems to be next. Andy's on the 40, though.
Yeah, I had seen somebody make a comment on Twitter, which it's Twitter, but somebody had mentioned about Kai Bush being the next one to move to AAA just simply because of his age, which is a fairly relevant concern, and he has been fantastic so far this year. So maybe that is maybe that is a consideration. I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, so he's not on the 40-man, so to get him to the big leagues, you'd need to make a roster move, but, obviously going to Charlotte doesn't really
matter. Yeah, that's the age-old concern here is, are we really worried about anybody actually getting sent to Charlotte?
I don't think so. Eater, maybe? Maybe him, when you deem him ready, you just call him straight to the big leagues, but, the way Drew Thorpe pitches, I'm not really worried about him pitching at Charlotte.
Yeah. Yeah, me either. I mean, I'm not per se, I'm not really worried about any of them. It's just, there has to be a known thing from everybody that it's just, if somebody's going to Charlotte, expect pop flies that are going to end up being, that are going to go out just because, not because.
Stadium? Jesus.
Yeah, those home runs, that John Birdie home run was terrible, and that was Aaron Judge home run as well.
Yeah, the Judge
Same
one was
thing.
crazy.
Yeah, I think the John Birdie one was like 2 rows deep. So Corey Julks ended up pulling that one back, although granted that was to left field and not to right field, but even still.
Are you surprised at all how quickly they pulled the plug on Keller? Because I just it shouldn't be a surprise. He stinks. But I didn't know if he had extra rope because of his relationship with Pedro.
At this point, I mean, my feelings on Pedro, obviously, but at this point, if they are asking for his opinion on personnel moves, well, then what are we doing? I mean, it's bad enough that you've got Gene Watson and you got all these Kansas City guys all over the place. I don't want their personnel moves. I will say though that the pro scouting department has been seems to have been doing a pretty decent job this year of evaluating guys that they're bringing in, at least in the fact that they're getting useful, reps from at least some of these guys, and a pretty decently high percentage of guys as well. So
yeah, for sure. Even the Corey Jolk's move, like the roster churn. Like this is something that I've wanted to see. They didn't do this like back in 2019. They would just have the same like Yolmer Sanchez and Adam Engel, and they'd never claim anybody that was DFA'd. So like they should keep doing this. Just keep giving people a shot, and see if anything sticks. Like I'm totally fine with this, you know. So the trade that they made this week for I mean, obviously I do our international stuff. Luis Rodriguez, I kind of told somebody to just pretend like that trade was for cash. So he's like a low 90s reliever. I don't think they're going to regret that one. And if you think that Jolks can help you get through the season or whatever, I just think deals like this are fine.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I went back and he's a DSL and an ACL guy only. And if you look at his whip hasn't been great. If you look at his write up, I think it said something about him dominating the ACL or whatever with his cutter or whatever pitch it was, and I'm like, okay, you can say that, but if he dominated, why does he have like a 1.9 whip? Like come on, man. Yeah, that to me, that trade was kind of you get somebody that's going to be useful to the major league team this year and wants to play. Fine. And he seems motivated. That catch he made in the outfield today was fantastic.
Yeah, and he's going to get the opportunity to play, and if he stinks, they'll get rid of him too and make another similar deal probably.
Yeah, just keep on doing it, and it goes down to that roster churn thing. The question being is that, we're finally getting some useful outfielders out there. Are we still going to continue to see Gavin Sheets and, trotted out there? It's that whole thing's still maddening, and he's. I was thinking earlier this year that maybe he had gotten a little bit better out there, but it's still like way, way, way below replacement value.
Well, his offense now is cratering too again. Like he's turning back
Shocking.
into Gavin Sheets. I know, yeah. It's like well, did you hear the comments from Eloy today? Like with this guy, like he kind of talked about he's still not comfortable as a DH. He'd rather be in the field. And it's like, dude, like we can't play you with. What are you talking about?
I would prefer to be a multimillionaire. Alas, I am not. You are not a right fielder. You are not an outfielder at all. I am sorry to break the news to you, pal, but you're a DH. That's what you are. Sorry. Yeah, I have to agree with you on that, Doug. Trade was fine. Enough pitching. Need some outfielders. Need some bats in general, I think. Speaking of trades, something that I knew that you wanted to bring up. There's actually a couple of things that you've been stirring the pot on the Twitter that I want to talk about a little bit tonight. But the
John Schriffen talk. Here we go, baby.
Absolutely, I need to have a little bit of that from you because it's.
Did you see that I'm a loser in Beef's column?
Oh boy, here we go. Why come?
What's up? Well, no, he said that. I don't know. He put one of my tweets in there and said that I was one of the losers because I defended 670 or something. I was like, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. The whole thing, I'm just kind of like, I don't really have like a rooting interest at all. I just think like the whole thing in general is fairly entertaining.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It really is.
Like I don't get either side the other night. Like I totally understand criticizing John Schriffen because he's a public figure, and as you've kind of said, like he's a slam ball announcer in Market 3. So like I get it, right? But I don't get like freaking out challenging him on Twitter when I guess you could just have like your host do it or whatever. That was the part that it got kind of a little bit blown out of proportion, but I'm sure it's not going away anytime soon.
I think that this happened before the weekend, so now the weekend's almost officially over. So tomorrow they finally get back on the air again tomorrow. So I'm really interested to see where that whole thing goes on the Parkins and Spiegel show, just to see which direction it heads in. I know that you tweeted out the House of L podcast that Lawrence put out earlier.
Yes.
Thanks for the Future Sox shout out. We appreciate that. And you know, he's going to get, I'm sure that they're going to get dragged into that whole thing as well.
You
And
would
I
think
think he
so.
kind of intimated into that in that episode that he's probably going to get dragged a little bit into that tomorrow when they have their first show. And we'll see where this whole thing goes. It could get
Yeah.
kind of weird.
Well, so I guess, like, the one thing I wanted to say, just that, like, I don't care. I don't care who I get lumped in with or whatever. Like, I think a lot of people that follow me know that I listen to a lot of sports radio, mostly 670. But I mean, I went on White Sox Weekly Saturday morning and
Yes, you did.
talked about prospects. Like, I like those guys too. I just, like, the thing that's unfair are the people that are like, that's the Cubs station. They never talk Sox, because it's not true. Like, at all. They talk Sox a lot, and there's not much to talk about. But I mean,
And
even
there's
like,
nothing good to say
there's
either.
not. And like Lawrence and Dan's show, they have Fegan on, they have the Sox Machine guys on, they have Russell Dorsey on to talk Sox like quite a bit. Like Guillen's on the morning show, and Matt Spiegel would talk baseball all the time if Danny Parkins would let him. Like, it's just, they would talk Sox all the time.
Yeah, no, it's I have it on in the background at work in my office, and I hear Sox conversation. I mean, granted, I hear 75% Bears conversation because they say it does ratings, which how after hearing the same arguments for 9 hours a day, I don't understand how that's a thing. But I mean, they do talk White Sox, and they don't talk an absurd amount of Cubs on there either. So that whole argument at this point, I think, is kind of moot. The White Sox being bad, the Cubs are okay, but they have their issues as well. They're not really talking either one of those teams to a crazy level at all.
Yeah.
So I don't see the argument there.
Well, and I mean, like, you have shows like ours, which Lawrence Holmes kind of talked about tonight, right? Like, if you want White Sox centric content, it's available. Like, our show's on right now. Nick's recording live right now. There's guys on all week, and they're all pretty good. Like, that's, like, if you were the PD or even the executive producer of like an afternoon radio show in Chicago right now, like, would you recommend your host talks White Sox?
No,
No, that's
no,
what I
probably
mean.
not.
Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
move the meter at all. So it's Bears, which is frustrating for probably non-Bears fans like you. And like, look, it's not football season, but it moves the meter, man. And the Bulls are terrible, the Hawks are terrible, and it's all Cubs talk otherwise. So I mean, like, they don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, no, you can't push the Sox talk because there's not really a whole lot worth talking about. So it makes sense that the percentages are kind of down, and not to mention, in general, White Sox, amount of fandoms here, like are kind of,
Right.
65-35 against the Cubs anyway. So
Hmm.
maybe 60-40,
Yeah, can you pull up that tweet or the message from Doug? I kind of want to address that actually.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up. So I guess, just like full disclosure here, this man has been on our show before. So he's talking about Jack McMullen, who's the AAA play-by-play guy for the Indianapolis Indians, and I think Jack is going to be a big league broadcaster at some point. Um, did I think that he was or should have been the favorite for the White Sox job in Market 3? No, not necessarily, but I'm fairly certain that he's more qualified than the guy they hired. Like, he just is. And there's Joe Brand is in town. He's doing Hawk stuff. He's done thousands of Kane County games, right? Like, these guys are young and they've done baseball. So if this was the route you were going to go, one of those guys makes perfect sense. And it just, It didn't happen. I don't know if that's why Spiegel has gone after John as much as he has. I'm not gonna speak for him, I don't know. But, I mean, if it were Jack McMullen, you got a white guy that grew up in, like, one area, makes a heck of a lot more sense than what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Schriffen detractor, uh, but I can see how people don't like him, and I can also understand why it kind of is one of those things where it feels like there's kind of training wheels on the broadcast. It's just that he's not ready for like this level of baseball broadcasting, in my personal opinion. If they wanted to go internal and wanted somebody that was going to be, specifically for the White Sox, and they wanted to keep it, in the family, they could have gone down to Charlotte and got Swirad or Pacheco, or Kurt Bloom, who's done a game for them as well. I mean, they
Mhm.
could have done a bunch of things, and this is what they decided on. He's excitable. He's got some flair, but the problem being is that he doesn't know the game as well as he should.
Well, and do you
So,
do you think that they're intentionally doing, like, the Hawk Harrelson thing? Like, the us against the world thing, like, calling out the haters? Like, or is this just what he's doing? Like, does he think he should do this because it's a local broadcast and that's what you do? Or is this kind of like what they wanna be? I can't really tell you.
yeah, I don't know. I kind of don't think that they're smart enough to build this us against them type thing. Like, I honestly don't think that that's what it is, just because I don't think that they have the forethought to do something like that. Even if they were, don't you think that they would pick somebody that at least knows the game of baseball really well?
Right, like, they don't care enough. They didn't even make sure he said Bill Veeck's name correctly. Like, I don't think anything about this is planned out or anything. They're just it's just whatever. Nobody's watching. Nobody'll notice, basically, you know,
Yeah.
until he says "radio losers" and then goes viral on Twitter. Yeah,
So I have a question for you, and this is like completely off topic.
yeah.
Your microphone, when you click on the microphone, does it? Which are you using, the headset mic, or are you using the desktop mic? That's what I'm wondering. That might be the weird issue, possibly.
Oh, I'm using my external microphone,
Hmm. I don't know
this
then.
one.
Okay.
I
All
know
right.
it's weird.
Fair enough. They said that the double back is the doubler is gone, so that at least that part's good. So moving along to other things that you've set off in motion on Twitter, Luis Robert has been mentioned by Jeff Passan as being a trade interest to the Seattle Mariners. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's the right team. I'd be pretty surprised if, he got moved in season. I think we've talked about that. I don't know. I don't really see it, but I do think that's the type of team that could do, like, the Nationals Juan Soto type grade. Like, they got a ton of position players. I think 9 of their top 10 prospects are position players. Now we're talking. Like, if it's them, I think they could make a deal. Now, that doesn't mean they would, because I think right now, if we went through trade packages, it's gonna be absurd. Like, the return's gonna be crazy. So, I don't know. I would bet against him being traded. I do think it's interesting that it was Passan, though.
Yeah, that was the kind of thing that made me take notice. Is that, had it been just somebody random bringing it up, I'd have been like, yeah, okay. But for the fact that this is a very well connected guy coming up and bringing this up, it seems like a very odd, just kind of thing to just pop up on Twitter. Just seems to me that it's kind of weird that now, while he's still injured, that Jeff Passan's bringing this up. It just seems like kind of a weird time to be bringing that whole thing up.
Well, for sure, and I did say like I had heard last week that they'd trade any. It doesn't mean they're going to. I just think, like, in the position that they're in, they have to at least, like, kinda think about it or listen, but there's only a handful of teams in baseball that could trade for Luis Robert, and those teams, probably half of them wouldn't even be interested.
Yeah, and not to mention, we're also looking at a guy who, I saw somebody refer to him as Byron Buxton in reply
Mm.
to your tweet there, and I was like, yeah, that kind of tracks. Both of them are oft injured center fielders that have all the potential in the world. It's just a question of will either one of them ever be healthy for a full entire season.
Yeah, for sure, and look, if the White Sox people, Chris Getz, Gene Watson, whoever, if they feel like Luis Robert isn't gonna ever be able to stay healthy consistently, then I think they probably trade him. I
Yeah.
just we don't know that.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And like the thing being that do they just want to get rid of that entire core of players? We know Eloy's gone. We know Moncada's going to be gone. All of that pitching's gone except for Kopech, and he's probably going to get moved this trade deadline as a lockdown closer if everything goes to plan here. Um, the only one that would be really left is Luis Robert, and they still have him under control for so long that they should be able to, assuming that the other team does see the value and believes in the fact that they can keep him healthy, then, maybe they're willing to give some decent return on that package. Although I don't know, with the risk that has been with his health, I don't know if they're going to be willing to part with as much as everybody thinks.
Yeah, I would agree there, and I don't know how like, he should be back pretty soon, I think. Uh, my guess is we hear deadline rumors, teams being interested, but nothing really moves, and then it becomes like a December winter meetings thing.
Yeah. I mean, we've got what, 25, 26. We got 3.5 years of control for Robert.
Right, yep.
So you're going to have to get some massive return
Mhm.
because if he does stay healthy, they're going to get huge, return on that. But the thing that you have to figure out is you're going to have to find somebody that believes that he's going to be that or is willing to at least give you enough decent amount of value back that you're willing to take the discount on moving him out just because you don't think that he's going to be healthy. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? They're willing to
exactly.
take that risk on his health.
Yeah, and I
So,
think it's kinda like and they cannot do this for Robert, but, like, the trade with the Mariners for Gregory Santos, right? I think at first blush, it's like, "Oh, that's not enough in return." And I think the primary point of that was to get the extra draft pick and the extra bonus pool money, and we'll see what they do with that in July. Um, but I think they kinda baked in the fact that they didn't think Gregory Santos was gonna be able to help them.
yeah. And now none of, well, I mean, Deloach hit his second home run today, so that was nice. Perlander Baroa had a scoreless inning today, which was also nice. But I mean, I'm not going to, split hairs here and say that it's 100% a lopsided deal. Granted, they haven't gotten anything out of Santos, but we haven't gotten a whole lot of great production out of Baroa, and Zach Deloach has been, like kind of middle of the road. So it's not like either one's, blowing up on either side. So uh let's let's hope if we see him traded that we're going to get some great value back. But at this point, this early in his contract, I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen.
Yeah, for sure, and I will say, like, so just, like, back to the Mariners idea, like, Colt Emerson was one of their high school picks last year, he's been really good. Colt, another young shortstop. They got a lot of guys like that. So it is a lot of bats. So something based around 3 to 4 bats, a young pitcher with control. I mean, pretty good. I just don't know that Seattle's gonna be willing to have, like, a year's trade deadline, and, you know, I feel like in the offseason, they could get beat if that's what it ends up being.
Yeah, I like Cole Young a lot. I like Colt Emerson a lot. Lazaro Montes also been very good. I mean, there are so many names. Colt, there are so many names that they have in their top 10 that I do like and would certainly be interested in. I just don't know how many they're going to be willing to give away for Luis Robert, knowing that you might get 100 games out of him a year. Is it worth? How much is that worth? How much is his time worth? Especially when you look at the first couple of weeks that he put up this year and the return on, like the numbers that he's putting up really aren't all that special. So, we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I just think there's lots of other guys that are gonna get traded before we talk about a Luis Robert trade, right? And it's that's the first thing I thought of when I kinda saw the Keller thing, that it would put forth, like, a bunch of other moves, and I'm like, "Oh, I wonder if they traded somebody," but it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think James Fegan alluded to the fact that it was a response move to Dominic Leone coming back from the IL and them wanting to keep Schuster in the bullpen. So that's why they're getting rid of Keller.
But I feel like
So,
I would keep Soroka in the bullpen too.
oh yeah,
He
yeah,
threw 97 the other day.
yeah.
So you're gonna put that guy back in the rotation for what reason?
I don't buy that. I don't know. And if they are, and my answer would be, what's the reason? Would be that they're dumb.
Yeah,
That would
because
be the only thing.
even, like, if you think you're gonna trade Mike Soroka for, like, a C minus prospect, right? Are you more likely to get that guy with him starting and having a 5 ERA or transitioning him to relief and maybe his stuff plays up?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I kind of think that Soroka is only going to be useful as a bullpen arm, and the only thing that anybody's going to want or trust is if he's throwing 97 miles an hour, coming out of the pen and only able to, maybe go a couple of innings. Like a contender can use somebody like that, in a mop up role if they are trying to conserve innings on the rest of their, like say on their starting staff or whatever. If you got somebody that can come out and throw 2 innings and you cut somebody off at 5 innings and, he goes 6 and 7, like that's a huge bridge thing and allows you to save, your starting pitching. So, as you're going into the playoffs and stuff like that I totally get. As a starter, I don't really see the value there unless he's throwing hard again because him in the starter role this year has not been great. It's not been terrible, but it seems a lot better coming out of the pen.
Yeah, I was kinda surprised because he's, like, the type of guy who I didn't really know that his stuff would play up at all in the pen. I'm like, "Is he just gonna be, like, a mop-up guy?" But his stuff was actually a lot better, so it was a little bit surprising.
It was, yeah. Brebbia hasn't pitched in 5 days. IL and call up Nastrini.
I mean, it could be Maestrini at some point, like, if they just, like, add him to the rotation, I wouldn't be that surprised. I don't know that he's, like, earned a spot in the rotation, but I'd rather watch him every 5 days than Brad Keller.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that DFA is. I am A-okay with that DFA. Yeah, that's so. Are you? Beefloaf actually tweeted about this last week that if he had his choice, he would rather see either Mason Adams or Drew Thorpe in Chicago than Nestrini or Cannon. Just I would assume because he thinks that the upside's a little bit higher. You have any thoughts on that?
No, I just think. I mean, look, I'm gonna trust Brian Bannister at this point. I mean, I feel like adding an Adams to the 40 man right now doesn't really make that much sense. Like a lost season.
Yeah.
But if it's Thorpe for just like one start because they want to get a look at him, he's on the 40 man. Like that, I would understand, right? Even if like all of a sudden Jake Eater's making his big league debut, just because they want to. He's 26 years old. He's on the 40 man. Those moves make more sense to me than like prematurely adding a guy, like before they're ready. Like Mason could hold his own. It just doesn't really seem necessary at this point.
Yeah. And these situations that keep on coming up, it really shows you what a mess they made out of the 40-man roster. And just the amount of moves that have to be made just to make something simple happen. It's absurd that they even have to consider, shuffling all the, deck chairs on the Titanic, I guess, just to try and bring more talent up to the roster. It's pretty awful.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how much you were gonna get into performances, but like Iriarte's on the 40 man. He had 13 more strikeouts today, so I think he has 46 Ks in like 33 innings or something this year. So I don't know. I don't really see the relief concerns that some had.
I mean, I can see it. It's kind of one of those things where sometimes he looks like, oh yeah, that's why they say that there's relief concerns. But it usually is like one start and then it's gone.
Yeah, like 8 walks one time.
Yes, exactly. That's when you see that, oh yeah, I could see why they say that, oh, there's some relief concern there. But then there's games like today where, he goes 7 innings and, one walk and 14 strikeouts, insane. So
In Birmingham. Yeah, that's a really good baseball team. And they're getting
yeah. Yeah.
So if they're not gonna send somebody to Charlotte, I'm curious what they do because like Schultz has been a Saturday night starter, as like in like a college role basically. He's going 4 innings every Saturday night. So if they keep him on that schedule, it does affect some of the other guys in that rotation kind of.
Yeah, we had this talk off air, sort of. So we have several options here because they're adding a 6 starter. So then they'll be, if they don't move anybody, then they've got 6 guys and everybody's got their day. And Noah Schultz can take Saturday like he has been, and they can shuffle everybody else around. So there's 6 guys in the rotation. Unfortunately, that takes the 6th man, that Saturday game takes him out of Winston-Salem. So now they're at 5. So, they could move, either Jose Ramirez or Shane
Murphy
to the rotation and still have one piggyback, I guess. Or, maybe they feel that Jose Ramirez is ready for Double-A, or they feel somebody else in Winston is ready for Double-A. They move him up with Schultz as a piggyback, and then they give Shane Murphy or whoever the other day. So there's still 6 starters in Winston. I mean, regardless, they're going to figure out a way to get this whole thing done. We just wait to find out how they want to lay out the rotations, if they want to have it as one start every week, or if they want to have it so every once in a while there's a guy that has 2 starts a week.
Right, because that's what was happening at some point. Like somebody would go Tuesday And then that guy would also throw
and
Sunday,
some
you know?
right.
So, do
Yeah,
you have any
Iarte's the
issue
next guy.
so, do you have any issue with guys just starting once a week? Or would you prefer to see that where it's just you stay in rotation and somebody goes twice a week?
I don't personally have a problem with it, as long as, we're not pulling the plug too short on some of these, you know, cover some of these innings. Like I don't like it when I mean, obviously with Schultz, it's a completely different scenario. But like some of these other guys where you're pulling them at like 75 pitches and like 5 innings or whatever, I don't want to see that anymore if they're only pitching once a week.
Right.
Here's a question.
Yeah, I mean, it could be him but it could be any number of guys, I kinda feel like. I mean, like,
Yeah,
Seth
could be
Keener
Keener.
Keener doesn't belong in low A. Lucas Gordon doesn't belong in low A. Um, obviously, Grant Taylor's there now, so, yeah, somebody could move, but I feel like it could be any number of those guys. I
Yeah.
mean, what happens to
Uh,
the Winston rotation now? They could just slide Murphy into it if they wanted, and then they don't need anybody.
yeah. I mean, he pitched 4 innings the other day, something like that, and had like 7 strikeouts. So, I mean, he
Yeah,
was great in Canny last year. I don't see any reason that and he comes in out of rehab in Arizona, and he just glides right into an advanced day. You'd never know that he hadn't pitched an advanced day before. He just came in and just started striking people out left and right and throwing up zeros on the
yeah.
scoreboard. So
Well, but then they also added Taylor to Canny. And they didn't do anything to accommodate, right? They didn't bump anybody up.
they did. They didn't bump anybody up. They just took Bach instead and made
Put him in the
him
bullpen.
like a piggyback guy. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, Bachenstab could go back in the rotation if somebody, Bautista or Keener or somebody goes to Winston. Because I
Yep.
think to me, it seems like the spots are in Charlotte. Like 2 or 3 guys could go from Birmingham to Charlotte, and then you could just, like, filter up kind of, but it just doesn't seem like they feel like doing that yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole thing is that I don't know if they have like some arbitrary date set where they're like, okay, this is when we're going to start moving everybody
Mhm.
around because they moved Noah Schultz in pretty quick.
They did, but how much do you think they're considering winning the Southern League title?
I mean, they haven't won in a long time, so
Right, like, and I think you may think it matters more than I think it matters, but, uh, I mean, if you don't want some of these guys in Charlotte or you don't think it matters, then I could see just leaving them in Birmingham and trying to be the best team in the Southern League.
got to win a championship somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, Thorpe is not gonna be in Double A. But if
Nope.
Mason Adams and Iriarte and some of these other guys are, like, I wouldn't be that surprised. They really just need innings.
Yeah, and like I kind of feel like if you're going to take a guy out of the Birmingham rotation, I don't think it's going to make a difference
Right.
because this organization in general is so deep in pitching that at least at the double A level, I feel like no matter what like who they pick out right now, that they could fill the slot and it would be no problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know who the most deserving is. Thor probably because he's great, but I mean, like, Kai Busch probably earned it too. Kai Busch has been really good.
Yeah, he's been real, and this is the whole thing, where people just were not happy with return on trades last year and were just complaining to complain, and the same thing goes for Eater. Kai Busch, Edgar Caro was like he looked okay, like they were mostly happy, they were mostly happy with him, but when it came to like all the returns on the trades, everybody was super critical about the return on the trades. So, yeah, he's looked great.
Yeah.
Amazing what happens when you don't have a lat injury, you know?
Yeah, I know we've been kinda talking about this every week, but Kenny, Rick, whoever it was, they found the sucker at the table last year with Artie Moreno. That Angels trade
Oh,
looks pretty good, and Caro, if you look at Caro's numbers in May, they're not great, but,
they're
like, that
not.
happens. It happens, right? So he could very easily just go back to his April numbers in June, and then everything's fine. So, but getting both of those guys for 2 guys that you weren't keeping, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about I literally not complaining about any of the trades that were made last year. I mean, if you look at Berger's numbers since he's come back from his IL stint, he hasn't been doing a whole lot. And yeah, he had a decent run last year after he was traded, but I mean, what was he going to do on this White Sox team anyway? What was he going to provide? Somebody who can't play third base but hits 30 home runs a year? I mean, that's cool. But if you can trade him and get something that's potentially a frontline starter, left-handed, that could be fantastic, you should take that chance. This is exactly the kind of time that you should take a chance like that, because this team was going nowhere anyway, and I'm pretty sure they knew that. So,
Yeah, I mean, Berger right now is, like, trending toward a non-tender because I think he's the type of guy where pre-arb, you like having him on your team because there's no reason not to, right? But once he starts costing real money, those are the guys that are tough to keep just because it's just not that valuable because there's no defensive value and they don't get on base. Like you can just, like the White Sox just signed one of those guys in Charlotte, and I know like nobody wants to hear that, but like Jared Walsh, it's like these guys are all over the.
yeah, Jared Walsh had, you know, more success than Jake Berger did, I would probably say, you know, and he couldn't find a job. So, at least relatively close to the amount of success that he had.
Mhm.
Anyway,
So
um,
obviously, like one other thing that happened this week, you watched Grant Taylor pitch in Kannapolis and kind of right away had some takeaways. So just I guess your thoughts on that. I interviewed that kid and loved him, and I just like watched. Um, I didn't watch. So I looked at like the stats from Arizona, talked to people that have seen him, and there was rave reviews. But now we're gonna have video.
yeah. So he made a couple of bad pitches. That's it. There was a couple of bad pitches. Uh, you know, everything else was great other than those couple of pitches. I think he hung like one slider or something like that, and it got hammered. I'll take that. Thanks, Beef. Yeah, so no, he looked great. Composed on the mound. Awesome. The velocity was great. The movement on the pitches, the profile of the pitches, awesome. He's pretty much everything that I hoped that he would be. It wasn't a perfect debut, but it was certainly, way more than not good. I was very happy with the debut. So
Yeah, and this is just gonna kind of depend on how back his like secondaries are because the fastball's better than it was. He's 97 to 100. Um, I know Joe Doyle told us kind of he looked like a top 20 arm last February, and then he blew out. And obviously, the White Sox did the same thing the previous year with Peyton Pallette, and his stuff is not back. His fastball's not what it was, and there's been some struggles there. But Taylor is kind of like the opposite of that. Some of these guys come back better and stronger, and that's how he's looked so far.
yeah, I was just actually going to bring Paulette up, just because of, samesies. Yeah, his stuff has not come back. The spin rates aren't as good. The breaking balls aren't nearly as sharp, and the velocity hasn't come back. They took they've been taking their shots and trying to get some value out of doing that, and it's worked a couple of times, and it hasn't worked that one time. So, I'm okay with them taking these risks and trying to get some real high upside, with the caveat that there could be a very, very low floor in, the fact that they might not get anything out of them at all.
Well, I think with Taylor, it just kind of seems. So first of all, he's like bigger than I thought he was. Like he's just looks like a workhorse already. Um, but I think he's even in a decent system that's loaded with pitching. He might be in the top 10 like right now, just because like he's one of the highest upside arms in the system. And I heard the reports from Arizona, but they've moved him to Kannapolis pretty quickly, so they've obviously felt the same way. He wasn't going to get anything out of pitching in Arizona.
Speaking of Arizona, do you want to move into that a little bit,
Sure.
just very briefly, because we don't have any video on that kind of thing, and it's kind of it's kind of like looking at Game Changer for a little league game. You see that somebody has a single, and you really don't know how that single happened. It could be just that somebody just didn't feel like catching the ball, and so they're credited with a single. You really don't know. But I will say that the White Sox are second in batting average and second in OBP in the ACL. That's pretty awesome. Also, second in OPS.
Yeah, pretty good.
That's nice.
George Wolkow, it's like 9 games. It's way too many strikeouts. But when he's not striking out, he's doing quite a bit of damage. So he's walking too. He's got a couple of homers. I think Javier Mogollon's the same thing. I feel like all of his outs are strikeouts. So even like after a rough start, his numbers look okay. There's just Adrian Heel is probably his name, but it's GIL like Gil. He's hitting like crazy. There's just a whole bunch of GSL guys that are there that are just playing well in Arizona. And there's been some years where there's just no offense at all. So it's good to see.
Yeah, pretty happy. And, we kind of set up like this, like friendship with the Prospects Worldwide guys, and they've been tweeting video at us, and we've been retweeting it. So, if you guys, hopefully you guys are following us on Twitter, but at FutureSox on Twitter, you can see, George Wolkow home run. You can see Javier Mogollon home runs. You can see, all sorts of nice stuff. Steven Flores, catcher prospect. It's nice to be able to get eyes on those guys, especially since they don't televise any of that stuff, don't stream any of that stuff, which I absolutely hate. Because one of the real problems I see with that is that we don't ever get highlights of the pitching generally, unless it's somebody like Grant Taylor. Like that's the only time that we've pretty much seen footage from Arizona is when he's the one who's pitching. So that's kind of a bummer. But
as you've kind of said it, like how hard is it to just turn a camera on?
You know what? I'm about to show you in July, because I'm going to end up in North Carolina. I'm just going to have a camera, and guess what? Stuff's going to show up on there. It's literally that simple. I don't understand why it's such a difficult thing. But
so I think my favorite thing about just like the random Wolkow highlights are just that this dude should be a senior at Downers Grove right now, and he is massive. Like he's so big.
Huge.
Yeah, he's like 6'7". He plays some center field. He kind of looks like Joey Gallo, but he's 18.
Yeah, and he is batting right after Mogollon, who is like 5'6".
Yeah,
he looks probably.
He looks like a 5th grader. Yes.
Yeah, he really does. It's pretty funny. What was I going to bring up? So yeah, we already talked about Iriarte's performance today. Do you have any other performance?
Well, I thought you were going to go into one of your favorites.
Mason Adams?
No, Riley Gowans. Yeah.
Oh, Riley Gowans? Oh yeah, he looked awesome today too. He had a no-hitter going into the 7th inning. He gave up, a single, and he had 2 walks, struck out 11, looked fantastic. Now that right there, when you talk about the Aaron Bummer trade, and you know, yes, you got the Nicky Lopez. Yes, you got your favorite guy, Braden Shoemake. Yes, you got Mike Soroka, who might be a piece out of the bullpen. Beef mentioned him earlier on Twitter. I saw, the fact that he's throwing 97 miles an hour, fantastic. But Riley Gowans and Jared Schuster, who's also in the pen in Chicago, like those might be the two most useful pieces from that trade for something that I think everybody hated anyway, because every time they brought him out, nobody seemed to have any faith in him. He had no faith in the defense behind him. And it was just generally always a bad experience whenever he came out. So, at least in the last 2 years. And now he's doing that for Atlanta, and we might have gotten some useful things for that.
Yeah, Riley Collins is a decent bit of pro scouting, right? That's a throw-in, and I don't think anybody was really expecting much, and he's in the starting rotation, and all we talk about is how loaded the starting rotations are in the minor leagues, and he's cracked one of them, so, yeah, that's pretty decent.
Yeah. I mean, when you're following up Noah Schultz from Saturday night as the Sunday starter, and you're going out there and dominating just like he is, it's generally a good thing. I mean, granted, I won't quite go there, but he's definitely pitching really well in advanced day. And, you've been able to see him build progressively. Each start, he's gotten a little better. So it's nice to see that he's pushed through the initial wall that he had when he was with the Braves. They had him kind of alternating between starting and relief, and he came here. They put him into a starting role, and he's been putting in some innings and been getting better. So there it is. Stole the Bummer trade. Ooh. I'm claiming victory on that one already, because I'm pretty sure every single Braves fan pretty much hates Aaron Bummer by this point. So, you have any particular performances that you were thinking of in the past week that you wanted to highlight here?
No, I mean, when I went on ESPN this week, I mean, obviously they asked about Colson Montgomery and like a timeline type of thing, and I don't really know. I kind of feel like it'll be after the All-Star break, no matter what. He has to keep doing what he's doing. I think there's some obvious hit pool like concerns and questions. But May's way better than April, and he seems to be focused on power, and he's getting on base more, and the defense hasn't been an issue, so we'll probably see him. And then I guess the other thing for me is just what they need to see from Jacob Gonzalez to just like kind of hike him up to Birmingham too.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of, after that insane stretch where he was doing really well for a couple of weeks, he's kind of cooled down a little bit this week. But I mean, it could be any one of a number of things. He still did get on base here and there, so it wasn't like he had a complete and total shutdown this week. But I think that for the most part, like the Dash offense did have a bit of a rough time in Greenville this week. There were a couple of guys that did really well, being Sean Gusenberg. I think he went 10 for 25 in Greenville this week, and had a couple of home runs. And Bryce Willits also had a good week there, but nobody else really had that great of a week. And that's like, Jacob Gonzalez had a great week before that. Wes Kath had been on a tear as well. It seems like a bunch of those guys cooled down this week in Greenville. So I'm kind of interested to see what happens in this following week. Yeah. And Sleepy brings this up. This is definitely something that needs to be addressed. Ryan Galaney for the Kannapolis Cannonballers. He's got something like a 1037 OPS or something like that. And he's hitting like 3 360 or 350 or something. I mean, there's, he's a full college guy, so clearly he should be playing in Winston-Salem. The only problem is I don't know what to do with him, but that actually brings up this interesting one here, is that should we be worried about Zavala yet? Because Zavala is hitting roughly about 180, 182, something like that. And he's been struggling pretty hard down there. The power hasn't really showed up. Obviously, the only thing I will say is that his BABIP is extremely low. And when I say low, it's like 220. So if his BABIP is coming in at like 220, that seems to me that that's probably, there is some weak contact here, which is obviously going to influence the BABIP a lot. As if there's weak contact, of course the batting average on that ball in play is going to be low because it's slow and right at somebody. There is definitely some of that there, but to me it does seem like it's probably a little bit low, because when he does hit the ball hard, it has been going at people as well. So I'm not worried yet, but it's something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, so the Galaney mention's interesting. So I know Kevin Burrell a little bit. He's one of the White Sox area scouts. He brought up Galaney to me this week, just kind of, hey, look at my guy sort of thing. He's doing well.
Yeah.
But I mean, like even Caden Connor down there, like those guys just don't belong in low A, but it's hard, right? I think when you're a day 3 college guy, this is essentially what you have to do to get noticed, right? And it's not really fair. Um, because a lot of these guys rake down there, and then you get to the higher levels, and then like it's kind of a struggle. But there's just, to me, there's no reason to keep them in Kannapolis much longer. I know you got to find them playing time, but yeah, they're just. I just think they're too good for the level.
Yeah, that's really the question here, right? Is that if obviously they're too good for Kannapolis, but who are they going to bump out of the way to push up and get some playing time? That's the thing, because they're probably not going to push Chris Lanzilli out of the way, probably because he's been playing fairly decent up there in Winston-Salem. Not going to push Zavala out of the way unless the White Sox see fit that he's going to go down and put him back in single A, which he's already proven that he can hit really well at, and then they're not going to bump DJ Gladney either, unless they bump him up at some point. But the thing is that, the performance there has been so as well. So it's like, these guys kind of have to bump those guys out of the way. And this is a great point, Doug, that I'm going to bring up, because I also miss Rookie League a lot. Granted, this is, a late season thing usually, but I do miss the fact that they don't have that, because it gives guys like this an opportunity to get more playing time and not have to sit behind people when they get drafted, or when they're too good for the ACL but not good enough for A ball yet. You could send them and they would go to the Great Falls Voyagers and they would play out there for a couple of weeks and get some extra reps in. And I do miss that a lot. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's not like Ryan Galaney would be playing in high rookie, but a lot of guys would be, and low would be better. So then it would be better judge like what some of these guys are, and that's one of the other things that the area scout really wanted to point out, was that he didn't feel like he was first base only. I think that's where he's been playing most of the time, though. So maybe the White, he's first base only, but I think when he was drafted, the recommendation of the area scout, like he played both outfield corners, he played some thirds. So maybe that's the bag, and that could be informative if he does move up and he could play some other spots.
Yeah, I think that's that's been happening to quite a few of these guys, is that, they generally profile as corner outfielder guys, but because there's so many guys that they're trying to get playing time that they ended up just kind of sticking them at first base, and they haven't been drafting first baseman. The only first baseman, like the true first baseman that they've drafted in the last 2 years is Tim Elko.
Yeah.
So yes, indeed. You got yourself a few extra minutes tonight, but I'm gonna go ahead and kick it to the last thing here. Are you do you have anything else for this week? Anything you want to bring up?
I I don't know if I do. I was searching for the Bob Nightingale Sunday notes column because I always do. That's like Sunday morning reading for me because he throws White Sox stuff in there and then it always comes
Yeah.
true. But the only thing yeah, so there's a question on it. So the only thing he had this year was something on the draft where he talked to scouts who thought that college players would go like 1 through 8 in the first round. And, with that, I'll say, well, 2 months out, um, there's 8 college names that we've talked about on here pretty prominently, and then there's 2 prep guys as well. So I I don't know that it's 8 college guys. I do think we know who the first 9 or 10 guys are probably.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. You know, that's the thing about the drafts. You never know exactly who it is until generally like an hour beforehand. Like you'll hear rumblings here and there. So I kind of have a feeling that that's what's probably going to end up happening again. Is that we'll find out. Like any time between like a minute, like an hour to like 3 minutes before the pick is made.
Yeah, Keith Law did a mock draft this week, and he had Jack Caglianone, um, to the White Sox. He sourced it and said that, they'd kind of been very aggressive with him. But he also mentioned Connor Griffin too as, one of the guys that the White Sox had seen it on. So he said it's too early to know, but I think these guys have to do mock drafts, and they do. So
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did some research yesterday on Jack just because I was interested. I knew that he was having a better year this year than last, but then when I kind of dove into the numbers, I was like, oh wow, he really genuinely has made some fairly large improvements to his game. His chase rate is way down. And I mean that's evident when looking at his strikeout numbers versus his walk numbers, which last year I think he had like a 20 like a I don't know, it was like a 17-18% strikeout rate to like a 5% walk rate. And this year he's got a 20% walk rate to 10% strikeout rate or something like that. Somewhere he completely flipped it, and he's striking out way less, I guess is what I'm saying here. And he does look pretty good this year. But I know that Doug will clearly be upset. Says pick a high school player, please, 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 Chris Getz.
I mean, I'm with him. I'd prefer a high school player. The only thing that's really going to bother me is first base. So
Yeah, fair enough. And like the question here, is that yes, they are younger and they have a lot of time to develop. Just the question always is with these prep players is that are they going to take that next step? You never 100% know for sure, and at least you have like some track record with the college players. So like I get it from both sides. You want that insane upside. I get it. But if you want that track record, I get that too. So it's tough.
yeah, and the 2 high school guys that Mike Shirley's taken in the first round, I mean, obviously, it's still a lot of projection, right? Like, it's Colson Montgomery and Noah Schultz, but it looks pretty good so far. So, I think I'd be okay with them gambling again on a prep guy if Mike Shirley's the one making the pick.
Yeah, and when you look at things like George Wolkow, who's drafted way on down the line, he was not drafted in the first round. So when they're taking risks like high risk type picks later on prep guys that they've worked out a deal with, more or less all I'm going to say is that if Mike Shirley and company think that Jack Caglione is the guy that they think is the biggest talent right there, I'm going to trust him. Yes, would I prefer a prep guy? I mean, yeah, I would prefer a nice young player, but if they, if these guys make the call and say that that's their guy, you have to kind of ride with it. What am I going to say? Like they didn't ask me, so I'm just going to have to trust in that they're doing good work. And so far from the last couple of drafts that we've seen, things have worked out pretty well. So
Yeah, and I don't think he would be pitching for anybody. So I think you're drafting the bat. I think you're hoping that he could play an outfield corner, but you're drafting a bat if that's the move. And look, I don't even know that he's going to be on the board at 5 because he's had a really good season.
Yeah, did he hit any home runs today? I didn't look.
I didn't see it on Twitter, and usually I see it if he does.
Yeah, I think he had 28 through yesterday. He hit 33 last year, so 28 home runs this year with a completely flipped strikeout to walk ratio is definite improvement. Nice to see. All right, so you're good for this week?
All good.
All right, sir. FutureSox.net, you can find all of our written content. You can find this podcast if you are looking for it there. You can also find it wherever you find your podcast. If you are listening to this in podcast form, know also that on Sunday nights, usually at 8, not this week, but usually at 8 p.m. on Sunday nights, we are on YouTube and on twitch.tv/FutureSox, where you can join us there as well. There's a Patreon link on FutureSox.net that you can choose to support us and get additional content here and there. And also, on our YouTube channel, every night that there is a game, we generally have all of the starting pitchers and home runs from videos uploaded to our YouTube. So that stuff's all on there. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. He is James Fox at JamesFox917. We thank you guys so much for your time. Please stop in and see us next week. Subscribe and like here on YouTube. And we appreciate you so much and have a great night. Thanks.